I've had a number of occasions just in the last week where I've gone back to some of Gurdjieff's work and to the Bible and to Rudolf Steiner and Jung, and been pulled into this examination of the inner life versus the outer life, and how we're trained, we're like raised to try to survive in this material plane, this physical plane. And that's where all of our attention, or much of our attention, is focused. So if you've been through trauma, you've learned to look inside. If you've been through life, had life experiences, you may have also found occasions where you had to reach down inside of yourself, and there's a void for material like this in popular society. So I wanted to rewrite or kind of revise some old work from like 1948 that this is from some work that Maurice Nicoll put out in his psychological commentaries. I think it's volume 3 on external versus internal considering. I'm Mark Roach. I'm here to present some views on life and about yourself, possibly, or your neighbors or friends or loved ones, family members that you might not have considered. And if you have considered, then great. This will be like eating ice cream for you. But let me share a little bit more from, it's called A Note on External and Internal Attention. It's from volume 3 of some of Maurice Nicoll's work. We often think of ourselves as being fully aware of the world around us, but in truth, our inner senses far outweigh our outer ones. The purpose of self-development, or what we might call the work, is to sharpen these inner senses. And as we do, something remarkable happens. Our perception of the outer world becomes more vivid, more alive. So this is a commentary on, are you really seeing? Let's be honest, most of us go through life on autopilot. We see things, but we do not really observe them. Or do we? Take your own street, for instance. You walk down it every day, but could you describe the shape of the houses, the color of the signs, how many steps lead to your front door? Chances are that you've never really noticed. This is where we practice, like painting or drawing coming in. They teach us to truly observe what we see. And then we start taking in these new impressions. Something shifts within us. Our consciousness expands. The work tells us that we aren't yet fully conscious, even though we think we are. And without new impressions, without fresh experiences, we stop learning, we stagnate. To grow, we must be adaptable. The first sign of intelligence is flexibility. The ability to adjust to new circumstances. When people stop adapting, they begin to die, not just physically, but psychologically. As Gurdjieff once said, a number of dead people are walking the streets. If you really knew, it's incredible. And he wasn't talking about zombies. If you find yourself saying the same things over and over again, holding on to the same opinions and prejudices, doing the same thing day after day after day, you're already dead inside. It's a sobering thought, but it's only through self-observation that we can wake up from this psychological slumber. Self-observation, turning inward. Now, Let's talk about self-observation. It's not just about watching a bus go by or noticing a tree swaying in the wind. That's external attention. Self-observation is about turning that attention inward. Just like you can observe a bus or a tree with some focus and detail, you can observe your own thoughts and feelings with the same clarity. Here's something fascinating. Even if you've never consciously observed your inner life before, you're still vaguely aware of it. Just like you're vaguely aware of buses and trees in your daily commute, this awareness gives us a starting point for deeper self-exploration. The goal is to develop an inner organ of perception called the self-observing I. This inner sense allows us to tune into the higher aspects of ourselves, parts that are always sending us messages, but are often drowned out by the noise of everyday life. When we begin to hear these inner messages, something magical happens. We're no longer driven solely by external events, the ups and downs, the chaos and drama that life throws at us. Instead, we start to be guided by something deeper within ourselves. So listening inward, beyond the false personality, most of us live with our attention tuned outward all the time, focused on what others think of us or how we appear to the world. This is what the work calls false personality. To truly hear our inner voice, the voice that connects us to the higher truths, we need to quiet this outward focus. If there were nothing to hear internally, then spiritually, this spirituality wouldn't exist. But the work assures us that there are higher parts within us that are always active, what we call higher mental and higher emotional centers. And they're constantly trying to communicate with us. But here's the catch. As we are now, with all our distractions and false identities, it's impossible to hear them clearly. We need to clear away a lot of internal clutter, the lies we tell ourselves about who we are and about what we're capable of. So the journey towards the real I, self-observation isn't an end in itself. It is a means to an end, a journey towards discovering your real I. When you start observing your thoughts and your feelings, you realize they aren't you. They're just things happening in you. At first, it's hard to separate yourself from them. You'll find yourself thinking, but this is me. But over time, with practice, you'll learn that these thoughts and feelings are not your true self. The fact that you can observe them means they aren't you. This journey is about peeling away layers of false identity until you get closer to the real I and the part of you that can't be observed because it's the one doing the observing. So you can find freedom through observation like this. Here's where it gets exciting. When you observe something internally, whether it's a negative thought or a difficult emotion, you stop identifying with it. And when you stop identifying with it, it loses its power over you. This is where true inner freedom begins. Imagine being able to look back over your day each night and separate yourself from all the automatic reactions and emotions that affected you. By doing this regularly, both in real time and in reflection, you begin to free yourself from being a slave to external circumstances. This is just one of life's greatest gifts. The ability to step back from automatic reactions and choose how you respond instead. So go ahead, start observing yourself today. You might just discover something extraordinary within. So that's the revised rewrite. And I'm not going to drag you through the entire original commentary, which was written in 1948, but I'm going to read a few phrases that I underlined in that work just to emphasize and make sure these points get across and aren't lost. Man has more inner senses than outer senses. The first sign of intelligence is the power of adaptation. If you realize you always say the same things, always take up the same attitudes, always do the same things, always have the same opinions and the same prejudices, you will see that you are really a dead person. You are psychologically dead before you are even physically dead. And this is extraordinary how psychologically dead people seem often to live a long time. To observe oneself is different from observing a bus or a tree. In order to observe a bus or a tree, the external attention is necessary. Simply to see a bus or tree requires zero attention. To observe them, their color, shape, and so on, requires directed attention. You see hundreds of buses and trees every day, but you do not observe them. It's all a vague, confused picture. In the same way, your inner life is a vague, confused picture. You do not observe it, but you are aware of it, as you are aware of these buses and trees. If we were not in some degree aware of our inner life, we could not focus inner attention on any of it more than if we were not in some degree aware of the external world. The development of that inner organ of perception called self-observing I leads to the development of inner senses that eventually lead us to an increasing sensitivity to the higher centers and to their continual messages to us. They have a source. They have a different motive, different from the changing scenes of events in outer life. That is, the kaleidoscope of life with its pendulum swings ups and down. Its continual shiftings is no longer our sole motive, which is power. We then begin to realize what is being worked from inside, instead only from outside. We get impressions from both sides, both outer impressions and inner impressions. The false personality is only turned outwards. To begin to hear in the work sense, this must be gradually made passive. Then we begin to hear internally. If there were nothing to hear internally, this work would not exist. Esotericism would not exist. Religion would not exist. And all inner development would be merely an idle dream and pure nonsense. So we have two fully developed centers working on us all the time, called higher centers, which we cannot hear. In this connection, the curing of the deaf in the New Testament means this psychological deafness. The man solely of the external senses is dead in this way. All that the work teaches practically is designated for a definite goal. It is not designed to make us good, whatever that means. And as it is often said, good at what? But to render passive a mass of critical interposing material, of which the first layer belongs to false personality. so that we may begin to hear. When you do not observe your inner life, it is merged with you, and you are merged with it, and everything lies in darkness, and in this darkness, one is much victimized and set upon. It is therefore a good thing to let a ray of light in. This self-observation, with this self-observation, we become more and more conscious of what is not us. If you take your thoughts and feelings as yourself, that is, as I, if you say I to them, you are inwardly in the greatest confusion and darkness. It is a long journey, but get rid of what is not us, what is not I. Whatever you identify with, outer or inner, has power over you and makes you serve it. Man was not made to be a slave, but owing to the powerful and constant hypnotism of life, he falls asleep and is then a slave to everything with which he identifies. In this way, by this clever trick, mankind is kept where it is, and endless, quite useless pain and suffering is produced. This is what the work teaches. Once you know and then understand this secret, you have something comparable to the pearl spoken of in the Gospels. So I hope this was enlightening to you, and if I can expand on it, shoot me a DM or an email or reach out some way, because this is deep, interesting material that can open up an enrichment to your life and help you make sense of some of the things that may have come across as suffering and painful, and bring a positive light to it. I'm Mark Roach, wishing you all the best.